Hi, this is Osama from Supermango
and Rob from Justablishment.
und heute geht es um besondere Chassis, die in letzter Zeit viel an Bedeutung gewonnen haben. Die Rede ist von Yokomo und Rob wird euch erklären, was an diesen Chassis so besonders ist und warum sie an Bedeutung gewonnen haben. Rob?
Hi, so originally we've spoken about drifting and how it started really with countersteer and how rear-wheel drive has taken over that. Part of that transition into rear-wheel drive taking over more to be more popular than countersteer has been what Yokomo have done and MST did. So MST was sort of the first in the market with what's called the FXX, exceedingly popular car, very popular down the club here at the DDC. Front engine, shaft driven, rear transmission. People liked the way it drove, the style it drove. They felt it represented how a drift car would really drive in real life. Yokomo arrived three years ago with what was called the YD-2 and the YD-2 Plus. This is a YD-2 Plus, carbon plated underneath. You can see from its distinctive shape. Not a YD-2 Plus now on the front. This has the new steering system, but effectively that was the layout of the car. Low engine mount rearward, 60% to 65% rear sort of weight distribution, 40 to 35 from the front, whereas the MST was about a 50-50 car weight distribution. It was very good retraction and was exceedingly quick compared to other cars on the market at the time. Gearbox driven at the back. You can see, again, low engine here. Good traction, particularly suited to carpet tracks, and we'll talk about how they derive this into more and more options and more types of car later on today.
Okay.
This is a YD-2 Plus chassis, as we've seen in the previous one of a more standard car. This alludes to what Yokomo started thinking of when they started to design the next chassis they did, the YD-2S. So they looked at this guy here has modified the Plus to have a high engine mount. This helps the roll on low traction corners, and you get more body roll into it and put more weight onto this outer wheel, and therefore helping traction when you're exiting low grip surfaces such as polished concrete. Not so much important on carpet, but on highly polished or painted concrete, that was important. Another feature of this car is actually the wrap-up modification to the front, which has a centralized steering rack. This was something that a lot of companies, tuning companies, looked at modifying on the YD-2. This was something that Yokomo later did, and we'll show you that towards the end of the SX2 and the later 2Es that had a different new sliding steering rack, which is the latest development by Yokomo. This is Yokomo's 2S chassis. So again, we spoke about they were trying to look at making the chassis better for low grip surfaces such as polished concrete or polished like tiles. The features of this were the high motor, the flexible chassis with no top plate. You see there's no carbon plate running from front to back. This gave the car a lot of torsional flexibility and also flexibility front and back as well. Using the standard steering mechanism that came from the 2 Plus. Battery was mounted, it had to be the shorter LiPo, either longitudinally or across the car. The idea of the high motor and the flexible chassis was to provide weight on the outside rear wheel in the drift as it went around the corner, and as you came out of the corner there was weight transfer onto this, helping you drive forward. The reason for that is that better acceleration out of the corner in competitions gave you the ability to try and distance yourself from the car in front or catch the car in front. Yokomo's follow-on from the Plus. This is the 2E. The difference is the bottom chassis plate is different. Retains the top chassis plate, which the 2S doesn't have. Very much aimed at your higher grip circuits such as carpet. This is the YD-2S plastic chassis, and I think because it's plastic that it's actually not very good. A lot of people think this car is really fantastic and certainly great for beginners. A lot of flexibility. Because the chassis is more compliant and has a greater flexibility, the setup of the car isn't so vital. If you have a very stiff chassis and a very stiff whole construction, the setup, the dampers, the way that everything works has to be spot on to make it work. Because this is more compliant, there's a certain forgivingness. That makes it a great starter car for people getting into the sport. And certainly you see this as a beginner's car, certainly in this club. Features of the car: plastic steering system, works very well. Longitudinal or transverse battery location, high motor. This, they've certainly put the metal dampers, certainly use metal dampers over plastic dampers, but a great beginner's car. So this, you might say, is the entry of Yokomo's YD-2 S range. A really good car. This is a very fine example of a Yokomo YD-2S. This is probably as hopped up as you can get with all the latest parts for that particular chassis. The steering mechanism is the earlier type, but it's the latest version of the earlier type. The high motor, the wide suspension at the back rather than the narrow that was the original on the 2 Plus. So a wider suspension at the front, at the back. It's got the side rails installed on this chassis here. Transversely mounted battery. ESC hidden behind the battery in front of the gearbox mechanism. Very, very fine example of what Yokomo got to with the 2S.